Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. It wasn't supposed to be like this. A weekend trip with friends, just a few days of hiking, some laughs, maybe a few drinks around the campfire. Nothing more than a chance to break the routine. Yet, in one instant, everything about my life, my marriage, the years I thought I understood, came crashing down. And it all started when Diana opened her backpack. It's strange how one seemingly insignificant moment can change everything, how one glance, one item, can make you question your entire existence. It was a Saturday afternoon. We were at a secluded cabin up in the mountains, the kind of place you only visit when you need to disconnect from the chaos of daily life. The cabin had no Wi-Fi, no signal, just woods, a lake, and the silence of nature. It should have been perfect. We should have been enjoying the serenity, the company of good friends. But there was something in the air, something I couldn't quite place. Diana had always been the life of the party, full of energy, always the one pulling everyone together. But lately, it felt like something was pulling her away from me. She'd been distant for months, and I had tried to ignore it, to pretend it was just a phase. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she was stressed with work, with everything going on. But as I watched her that afternoon, sitting with our friends, laughing, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I didn't realize it then, but that feeling was the first clue that something was already slipping through my fingers. After dinner, we all decided to go for a walk. It was a chilly evening, the kind of crisp mountain air that burns your lungs when you take a deep breath. We walked in a loose group, some ahead, some behind, with Diana and I at the back. I noticed that she was walking a little slower than usual, her steps light, almost hesitant. Her usual confidence was gone. When we got back to the cabin, the others were already inside, getting ready for another round of drinks. Diana and I were always the first ones to retreat to our room. She liked the privacy, the quiet. She liked to escape the noise for a bit, even when we were supposed to be relaxing. I thought she'd be in bed by now. But when I walked into the room, I found her sitting on the bed, staring at something in her hands. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. At first, I thought she was just tired, maybe a little emotional. It had been a long day, but when I got closer, I saw what she was holding. It was my ring, our wedding ring. I didn't even recognize it at first. I thought I had left it at home, on the dresser. But there it was, in her hand. Diana's fingers were trembling as she turned it over and over, staring at it like it was a foreign object. "What are you doing with that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to ignore the sudden spike of panic rising in my chest. Her eyes snapped to mine, wide with something I couldn't read. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she set the ring down on the nightstand beside her and opened her backpack, digging through it with shaky hands. And that's when I saw it. The photo. It was a picture of us from a few years ago, taken on a beach during a trip to the coast. We were laughing, caught in a moment of pure happiness, unaware that the future would soon come to change everything. I had slipped that photo into her bag before we left for the trip. It was my quiet way of reminding her of the good times, the love we shared. But now, looking at her face as she stared at the photo, I knew something was terribly wrong. She dropped the picture on the bed, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. Her lips trembled, her eyes filled with something I couldn't name. Shock, regret, fear. I had never seen her like this. "Diana," I said, stepping closer, my voice barely a whisper. "What's going on? Why are you acting like this?" She finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say anything?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What was she talking about? What did she mean? Why didn't you tell me? I felt my throat go dry. "What are you talking about?" Her gaze flicked to the photo, then back to me. "You think I don't know? You think I didn't notice? That I didn't see the way you've been pulling away? The way you've been distant? You think I didn't notice the ring? The way you haven't been wearing it for weeks?" I froze. The words stung, each one cutting deeper than the last. Diana, I." She stood up abruptly, her hands shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I found the letters, the notes. I know what you've been doing." I blinked, confused. "What letters? What are you talking about?" Her eyes were wild now, the fear in them replaced by something else, something darker. "I saw the messages. I saw the way she looks at you. I knew, her voice cracked, her breath shallow. "You thought you could hide it? You thought I wouldn't find out?" The room seemed to close in on me. My heart was pounding in my chest. I had no idea what she was talking about. I had no idea what messages, what letters, what she was referring to. I don't, Diana, please. What are you saying? But she wasn't listening. She turned away from me, clutching her chest as if she couldn't breathe. I saw the way you looked at her. I saw the way you touched her. I saw the way you've been changing, and I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't know what to say. My mind was spinning. The world seemed to blur at the edges. I tried to find the words, but they escaped me. I started again, my voice barely above a whisper. I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant for you to find out like this. But it was too late. She had already seen enough. And that was when I realized the life I thought I had, the life I thought was solid, was already slipping away. And it all began with that damn photo, the ring, and the secret that I had kept hidden for far too long. I didn't know what to say. Her words hung in the air like poison, sinking into me with each breath I took. She was shaking, her face pale, her eyes wide and filled with a mixture of disbelief and pain. My mind was racing, trying to process what she was saying, but it felt like my thoughts were moving through thick molasses. The weight of her accusations crushed me. Diana, I don't know what you mean. I stammered, my voice weak, unsure. I could feel the panic rising in my chest, but I tried to stay calm. I had to. She shook her head slowly, as if she couldn't believe I was denying it. You think I didn't notice? The way you've been acting, how you're so distant now, how you've been wearing that other woman's perfume when you come home, how you forget to wear your ring. My heart sank. The perfume. I had never even thought about it. How stupid could I be? The ring. God, I had taken it off days ago. It wasn't intentional. I just hadn't thought about it. But now, standing there, with her trembling in front of me, I realized how much those little things must have hurt her. They were signs. Obvious ones. I never meant for any of this to happen. I said, my voice shaking now. The panic was building. There's nothing going on, Diana. I swear. You're misinterpreting everything. She took a step back, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of sadness and anger. Misinterpreting? No. I saw the messages. I saw how you looked at her. I saw everything, and I can't just ignore it anymore. How long, huh? How long were you planning on hiding it from me? I felt like the ground beneath me was slipping away. The accusations were coming at me like a barrage of arrows, each one hitting its mark. I had no defense. What could I say? I had been hiding something I hadn't even realized I was hiding. My actions, my distance, everything, it was all adding up. But the truth? The truth was far worse than I could have ever imagined. I don't know what you think you saw, but it's not what you think, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My hands were shaking now too, but I couldn't stop myself from reaching for her, trying to make her understand. Please, Diana, just listen to me. But she pulled away, her face set in a hard expression, tears welling in her eyes. No, I've listened to you long enough. I've watched you change. I've been patient, I've tried to give you space, but you've been slipping away for months. And now here we are. My mind was spinning. I wanted to beg her to understand, to tell her the truth, but something told me that the truth wouldn't make a difference. It wouldn't take away the pain. I couldn't even remember when things had started to fall apart. Was it the late nights at work? The quiet dinners with nothing but awkward silences between us? The small lies I'd told to cover up my own guilt? I had been so caught up in whatever I thought I was doing that I hadn't noticed how much I had been pushing her away. I sat down on the bed, my head in my hands, trying to gather my thoughts. Diana stood at the window, her back to me, her body rigid. She wasn't crying, but I could feel the weight of her silence. It was louder than any scream. I never meant to hurt you, I finally whispered. I never wanted any of this to happen. She turned slowly, her eyes cold now. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see how you're trying to justify it? How you think I'm just supposed to forgive you and move on? I couldn't answer. There was no justification. What could I possibly say that would make any of this right? You were my world, she continued, her voice shaking with emotion. I trusted you more than anything. And now, it feels like everything we've built is nothing. The words cut through me like a knife. I felt like I was drowning in guilt, in regret. I had never imagined that this could happen. I had taken her love for granted, never realizing that the cracks were already forming beneath the surface. The photo, the ring, the letter, it wasn't just about those things. It was about everything I had overlooked, everything I had ignored. The signs were always there, but I had been too blind to see them. I had been too focused on myself, too wrapped up in the lies I told myself. And now, Diana was standing in front of me, shattered, asking questions I had no answers to. "I don't know what you want from me anymore," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper now. "I don't even know who you are anymore." I stood up, desperate, trying to bridge the gap that had grown between us. "Please, Diana, don't say that. I'm still the same person. I love you." But the words felt hollow. How could I say I loved her when I had been so careless, so selfish? How could I ask her to believe me when everything I had done told a different story? "I don't know if I can believe you anymore," she said, shaking her head slowly. Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw the tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "I don't know if I can keep pretending that everything is fine." Her words hit me like a tidal wave, crashing into me with such force that I couldn't even breathe. Everything I had ever known about love, about trust, was slipping away. And it all started with a ring, a photo, and a lie I wasn't ready to face. I could feel the weight of her words pressing against me, suffocating me. I wanted to explain, to make her understand, but the more I tried, the more hopeless it seemed. Her eyes were filled with pain, disbelief, and something else, something I hadn't seen in her for years. Anger. Real, raw anger. And I knew, deep down, I had brought this on myself. "I thought we were happy," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought we had something real, something solid." She paused, looking down at the ring on the nightstand. The one I had left there, the one I had stopped wearing, as if it meant nothing anymore. "But you don't even wear it anymore. It's like you don't even care." My stomach churned. She was right. I had stopped wearing the ring. I didn't even notice. At first, it was because of work, then because of the tension between us, then I just didn't feel like I had a reason to wear it. But standing there, hearing her words, I realized how foolish I had been. How blind. "I never meant for it to be like this," I said, my voice cracking, each word heavier than the last. "I didn't even realize. I didn't notice how far apart we'd grown." She shook her head, wiping her eyes. "You didn't notice?" She let out a bitter laugh, almost without humor. "You didn't notice that you stopped being here, that you stopped being with me, that you've been somewhere else this whole time?" I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was right, and I couldn't deny it anymore. "I don't know how it happened," I said, almost to myself. "It wasn't intentional, but I see it now. I see what I've done." She didn't look at me when she spoke next. "I found the messages, you know. I've been keeping track, watching you." Her voice softened, but there was an edge to it now, as if the hurt had turned into something darker. "You think I didn't notice when you started sneaking around? You think I didn't feel the distance?" That was when the cold truth hit me. She wasn't just hurt. She had been watching, waiting for me to realize what I had done. But I hadn't. I hadn't been paying attention. I had been so caught up in whatever was going on in my own head, whatever distraction I thought was important. I didn't think you knew," I said quietly, barely able to breathe. "I thought if I just kept pretending, we could avoid it. Avoid everything. But now, I see that I've been wrong." Her eyes met mine then, and they were filled with something sharp. "I knew. I've known for a while now, but I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to believe it. I kept making excuses for you. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that things would get better." She took a step back, her voice gaining strength with each word. "But it never did it?" The air in the room seemed to thicken, the silence stretching between us like a chasm I couldn't cross. "I never meant to hurt you," I whispered, barely able to hold back the tears. "I didn't mean for this to happen." But it was too late for apologies. She had already seen everything, felt everything, and no apology could erase the damage I had done. The room was thick with silence, broken only by the sound of Diana's shaky breath. Her eyes, once filled with love, now reflected a deep, cutting pain that I could barely look at. I wanted to reach out, to take her hand, to make things right, but I knew it was too late. I could feel it in the way she was pulling away from me, as though every step I took toward her made her want to retreat further. "Why did you keep the photo?" she asked suddenly, her voice low but sharp. I froze. The question hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the ring or the messages, it was about the photo. The photo of us, happy, carefree, from a time when things were still good between us. Why had I kept it? Why had I hidden it in her bag, knowing it could trigger this very reaction? I thought it would remind you of us, of what we had, I said, my voice trembling with uncertainty. I had no real explanation, just the truth that felt inadequate now that it was out in the open. I thought it would bring us back to a time before everything started to fall apart. She stared at me for a moment, as if searching my face for the honesty I had failed to give her all these months. Finally, she shook her head, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It's too late for that, she whispered. I watched her turn away, as if the weight of my betrayal had physically pushed her farther from me. My heart clenched painfully, and for the first time in years, I felt the depth of my loneliness. But it wasn't just loneliness. It was guilt, shame, and a cold realization that the life I thought I had was slipping away from me, slipping through my fingers like sand. I didn't mean for this to happen, I said, my voice desperate. I never wanted to hurt you. But my words felt hollow, meaningless. They couldn't undo what had already been done. The truth was, I had let my guard down. I had allowed the distance between us to grow. And now, standing there, I realized just how much damage I had caused. All the little things, the missed dates, the late nights at work, the forgotten ring, had added up to something far worse than I had imagined. And Diana? She had been holding on, waiting for me to notice, waiting for me to wake up. I can't keep living like this, she said, her voice steady, but it cut through me like a blade. I can't pretend everything is fine when it's falling apart. I felt my chest tighten. Diana, please, I begged, stepping closer, reaching for her. We can fix this. We can talk about it. We can try again. She pulled away from me, her face pale but resolute. No, we can't. Because you're already gone. I'm the last to know, the last to realize that you've been gone for months. And you still don't see it, do you? Her voice broke on the last word. You don't see how far you've pushed me away. I wanted to argue, to say that I had tried, that I didn't mean to neglect her. But the truth was, I hadn't tried hard enough. I hadn't noticed how much she needed me, how much I was slipping out of her reach. I never meant for you to feel this way. I whispered, my voice barely audible. I know, she said quietly, her eyes softening for just a moment. I know you didn't mean it. But that doesn't change what's happened. And it doesn't change the fact that you've broken something in me that can't be fixed. The finality in her voice hit me harder than anything else. It wasn't anger now, it wasn't rage, it was resignation. She had already made up her mind, and no matter how much I wanted to change things, it was already too late. I'm sorry, I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. I'm so sorry. But Diana didn't reply. She just turned away, walking to the window again, staring out into the dark night. The silence between us was deafening, and I knew then that we were done. I stood there, paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak. The woman I had once known, the woman I had promised to love and cherish, was slipping away from me, and all I had left was regret. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours, with every second hanging heavily between us. I watched Diana at the window, her back turned to me, her figure tense and rigid. The stillness in the room was suffocating, as if the very air had thickened with the weight of the unspoken words hanging in the space between us. I don't know how to fix this, I finally said, my voice breaking the silence. It felt weak, defeated, and I hated myself for it. But it was the truth. I had no idea how to undo the damage I had caused. I had spent months letting things fall apart, and now it was too late. Diana's shoulders stiffened at the sound of my voice, but she didn't turn around. She didn't even acknowledge that I had spoken. For a moment, I thought she might leave the room entirely, walk out and never come back. The thought of her leaving, of her walking away from everything we had built, hit me with an intense force that left me breathless. I had made so many mistakes. The texts I hadn't responded to, the nights I'd come home late and not even bothered to explain where I'd been. I had let my work take priority over her, over us, and now I was reaping the consequences of that neglect. But the truth was, there was something else eating away at me, a deeper fear that had been gnawing at the edges of my mind since I first noticed the distance between us. It wasn't just about the work, the late nights, or the missed moments. It was about her. It was about how she had started to change, too. There had been something in Diana lately that I couldn't place, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The way she would look at her phone with an unreadable expression, the way she'd seem distracted when I tried to talk to her, the way she sometimes pulled away when I touched her. It wasn't just me. She was pulling away too. But I never confronted it. I never asked her what was going on because I was too busy with my own demons, too busy pretending everything was fine. Now, standing in the quiet of that room, I realized how much I had taken her for granted. How much I had assumed that things would always be okay, that love would just carry us through. But love wasn't enough to fix the cracks I had ignored for so long. I saw the messages, Diana said suddenly, her voice cutting through my thoughts like a knife. I froze, my stomach twisting into knots. I saw the way she messaged you, the way you responded. I know what's been happening. Her words hit me with the force of a punch to the gut. She knew. She knew about the late-night texts, the secret conversations I thought I had kept hidden. I hadn't thought she would find out. But she had, and now the truth was out in the open, and there was no taking it back. I never meant for it to happen like that. I stammered, my mind racing. I wanted to explain, to apologize, but the words felt useless, empty. I never meant for you to find out. You think I wanted to find out? She said, her voice rising, the bitterness creeping in. She finally turned to face me, her eyes blazing with anger and hurt. You think I wanted to be the last one to know? To feel like a fool, wondering if everything was just a lie? The rage in her voice was raw, and I couldn't blame her. She had every right to be furious. I had betrayed her trust, and now I was standing here, offering her nothing but excuses. I never wanted to hurt you. I whispered, my throat tight with guilt. I never meant to hurt you. Her gaze softened for a fraction of a second, but the moment was fleeting. She turned away from me again, walking over to the small table by the window. You can't undo what's been done, she said, her voice low and controlled now. You can't just apologize and expect everything to go back to how it was. What you've done, it's broken something in me that can't be fixed. Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. I had no response. What could I say to that? How could I fix the irreparable damage I had caused? The illusion of our perfect life had shattered, and no amount of apologies could piece it back together. I thought I was doing the right thing, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would make it all too real. I thought I could make it work, that I could balance everything. But I didn't. I failed. I failed you. She didn't look at me when she spoke next, but I could hear the weariness in her voice. And I'm tired too. Tired of pretending everything is fine when it's not. Tired of holding on to something that's slipping away. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I had no more fight left in me. I had no more defenses to put up. I was exposed, and Diana had already made up her mind. She had known for far longer than I had, and now that truth was finally coming to light. I'm sorry, I said again, but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. And in that moment, I knew whatever had been between us was gone. Whatever connection we had once shared had evaporated, leaving only the emptiness behind. The room felt suffocating now, the air thick with the weight of everything unsaid, everything that had been festering for far too long. Diana stood by the window, her face shadowed, her posture rigid. I couldn't tell if she was waiting for something from me, or if she had already made her decision. Either way, I felt like I was drowning in silence. I didn't mean for this to go so far, I said, desperate, my voice breaking. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. She didn't turn around. Her gaze remained fixed on the dark horizon outside, as though she was seeing something far beyond the cabin, far beyond me. You didn't mean for it to happen, she repeated softly, almost to herself. But it did, didn't it? You can't take back what's already been done. You can't undo the choices you made. I swallowed hard. She was right, of course. No matter how many times I said it, no matter how many times I apologized, it wouldn't change the fact that I had been distant, inattentive, and, ultimately, unfaithful. I had spent months looking the other way, pretending everything was fine, thinking I could avoid facing the truth. You don't have to say it, Diana continued, her voice steady now, but with a deep sadness that made it hard to breathe. I already know. I've known for a while. A bitter lump formed in my throat as I struggled to find the words. Diana, please. I swear, I didn't want to hurt you. She turned slowly, finally meeting my eyes. The anger I had seen earlier was gone, replaced by something else, something more heartbreaking. You already have, she said quietly. You've been hurting me for months. But now it's different. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. The finality in her words cut through me like a knife. I wanted to protest, to say that we could fix it, that we could work through this. But the truth was, she had already made up her mind. She had already seen the truth, and now, she was seeing me for what I had become. I know I can't make up for what I did, I whispered. You can't, she interrupted, her voice barely audible. You can't fix this, not now. Not after everything that's happened. The pain in her eyes was unbearable. The woman I had once known, the one who had trusted me with her heart, was slipping away from me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Every word I had said, every apology, had only made things worse. I wish I could go back, I said, my voice breaking, my hands shaking. I wish I could go back and do things differently. She shook her head, her expression unreadable. You can't. No one can. But I've learned something important through all of this. What? I asked, a sinking feeling in my chest. She looked at me one last time, her eyes searching mine, as if trying to see if there was anything left of the man she had once loved. I've learned that I can't hold on to something that's already gone. I can't keep living in the past, pretending things are different when they're not. And just like that, the door to any possibility of fixing things closed with a final, painful slam. Diana had let go, and I was left with nothing but the wreckage of what had once been. I'm sorry, I whispered again, but this time, the words felt empty. I wasn't sure if she even heard me. She turned away from me and walked toward the door. With every step, it felt like she was leaving not just the room, but everything between us. Everything I had failed to see until it was too late. And then she was gone. I stood there in the silence, unable to move, as the weight of her departure settled in. The door clicked shut behind her, and for a moment, it felt like the world had come to a standstill. I wasn't sure if it was my mind playing tricks on me, but the air in the room felt colder, heavier, as if everything had been stripped away, like the walls, the bed, the cabin itself had become nothing but a hollow shell. I couldn't believe it. I had spent so long running from the truth, trying to pretend everything was fine, and now, the consequences were impossible to ignore. Diana had walked out, and it wasn't just the end of a conversation, it was the end of something far deeper. I walked slowly to the window, staring out into the darkened forest. The night was still, but my mind was anything but. I kept replaying everything in my head. The moment Diana found the photo and the ring, the way she looked at me with that cold, distant expression. Her words echoed in my ears. I'm done. It wasn't just a simple declaration. It was a door slamming shut, a finality I hadn't seen coming. I had known things weren't perfect, but I hadn't realized how bad it had gotten. How much she had been hurting, how much she had been carrying on her own, while I buried myself in my excuses. The messages, the late nights, the quiet moments where I should have been there for her. I had missed all the signs. Every chance I had to fix things, to be present, I had wasted. I sat down on the bed, my hands trembling as I ran them through my hair. What had I done? How could I let it get this far? The regret was consuming, overwhelming. But there was nothing I could do now. Diana had made her decision. I looked over at the nightstand, where the photo still lay, crumpled, discarded. I picked it up carefully, staring at the image of us from years ago. We had been so happy then, so carefree. I remembered that day like it was yesterday. The way the sun had kissed her skin, the way her laughter had filled the air. That version of us felt like a lifetime ago now, and I wondered if it had all been an illusion. I couldn't help but wonder, was she right? Had I been gone long before she even realized? Had I been living in denial, thinking that time and love would fix everything, that I could somehow hide behind my own guilt and pretend it wasn't happening? I stared at the photo until the edges of it blurred, the tears I had been holding back threatening to spill. But no matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't cry. I couldn't bring myself to feel the release of it, because crying would mean admitting I had failed her in the worst possible way. The sound of footsteps outside brought me back to reality. I didn't have to look to know it was Diana. I could hear her moving in the distance, the soft click of the door opening again. I turned quickly, but she wasn't there. The silence returned, even heavier now. She was gone, really gone this time. I wanted to call out to her, to beg her to come back, to tell her I was sorry. But I knew it was too late. The hurt in her eyes, the way she had looked at me one last time, like I was someone she didn't even recognize, told me everything I needed to know. There was no going back from this. The reality of it sank in, and with it, a cold emptiness that seemed to fill the entire room. Diana was no longer a part of my life, and I had nobody but myself to blame for it. I stood up and walked to the door, my fingers brushing the doorknob as I stared at the dark hallway beyond. I didn't know where she had gone, and honestly, I didn't know if I would ever see her again. But at that moment, as I stood there alone in the quiet of the cabin, I realized something. It wasn't the end of the world, but it was the end of my world. And that was the hardest pill to swallow. The night felt like it would never end. The weight of the last few hours sat heavily on my chest, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost everything. Diana was gone, and all the words I had said, all the apologies, couldn't bring her back. I could hear her voice echoing in my mind, her last words. I'm done. They weren't just words. They were a verdict. But in the stillness of that room, with the weight of my mistakes pressing down on me, something within me began to shift. I had been so consumed by guilt, by regret, that I hadn't realized until now that I still had a choice. It wasn't too late to change, to become someone better. I didn't know what that would look like, or how I would find a way to fix the damage, but one thing became crystal clear to me. I was done wallowing in the past. I had hurt Diana in ways I couldn't even comprehend, but I was going to make sure that this moment, the loss, the regret, the realization, wasn't the end of my story. I wasn't going to let it define me. It was time to rebuild myself. It was time to start fresh, even if that meant facing the consequences of what had happened. I walked to the door, looking out into the dark forest. There was no sign of Diana. She had truly left, and I had no idea where she was. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back to the man I had been. I couldn't stay in this endless loop of regret. It was time to move forward. The next few days were a blur of self-reflection, painful realizations, and, slowly, moments of clarity. I spent hours thinking about everything that had gone wrong and everything I had neglected. But in the midst of it all, there was a growing sense of determination. I couldn't fix my past with Diana, but I could build a better future for myself. I started with the small things. I enrolled in a self-improvement course I'd been putting off for months. I reached out to old friends, people I had neglected during my years of selfishness. I started going to therapy, something I had resisted for far too long. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I was finally doing the work I had been avoiding. Months passed, and as I worked on myself, I realized that while the pain of losing Diana never truly went away, I had grown. I wasn't the same person I was before. I was learning how to be better, not just for her, but for me. And then, one day, I got a call. It was from a mutual friend of Diana's. They told me that Diana had been through a rough time since our breakup. She had been struggling with guilt, the weight of her own actions, and the decisions she had made. She had begun to realize that her own behavior, her inability to communicate, her growing coldness, had contributed to the breakdown of our marriage just as much as my mistakes had. But karma, it seemed, had its way of working itself out. As it turned out, Diana's new relationship, one she had thrown herself into after leaving me, had unraveled in a painful and public way. She had been in denial about her own flaws, thinking that running away from her problems with someone else would fix everything. It didn't. And just like that, she found herself facing the consequences of her own choices. It wasn't about revenge for me. I didn't take pleasure in her pain, but the reality was hard to ignore. Diana had learned the same lesson I had, that running from your problems only leads to more damage, and that escaping to something new doesn't fix what's broken within yourself. In a way, it was her own version of the painful reckoning I had gone through. And while I felt sympathy for her, it was clear that her journey would be a long one, just like mine had been. I had my own work to do, but I had learned that redemption isn't something someone else can give you. It's something you earn on your own. And in the end, I found peace. I found peace in knowing I had the power to change, to move forward, and to never make the same mistakes again. Diana and I never crossed paths again. I never sought her out, and she didn't try to contact me. But I couldn't help but think that, in the end, we both got exactly what we needed, a hard lesson in the reality of love, trust, and growth. And so, as the years passed, I became someone better, not for her, but for me. And that, in itself, was enough. Please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.